Well, here we have the table that we've been French polishing, or the tabletop. That's had all of its coats on now. I've done 4 and they've been quite heavy coats, but as you'll see, it's not looking too bad at that. It's got the right amount of sheen on it, and you know I was telling you earlier on, you don't want it to go treacly. Well, 1 or 2 more coats on that and it would. So next stage, believe it or not, is we're going to wire wool it again. And the reason for that is that after we've wire wooled it, we want to be able to put the wax finish on it. And the wax will stick to French polish, but it tends to skid a bit. So wire wool, it cuts rather than scratches. So without further ado, get some of the old dust out of it. That's old French polish dust. Health and safety, sorry about that. Right, just a light rub over. If you see any bits where there's a little bit of dust, will show like a comet's tail. When you draw the dust over the top of the fixed dust, it'll look like a comet's tail, and that's where you've got to concentrate on just getting rid of that little bit. You'll see it more when you go across the grain like this. Doesn't matter how you do it, as long as you end up going across the grain. And there's a few little bits in here. That's not big enough to worry about. So I'm not trying to cut it back so that it's another completely dull finish ready to accept the French polish again. What I'm doing is I'm just taking the top off so that it creates a key for the wax. If you take it too far, you'll lose the luster of the French polish, and then you're going to be relying on plenty of layers of wax to get the finish up again. This is starting to look half acceptable now. There's been times when I've been doing this and I've been thinking I'm not going to be happy with this, but I think it's coming good. What you've got to remember is, as much as you would like to get everything absolutely perfect for the piece and for the customer, there's only so much a customer's going to pay. Between me, you and the gatepost, I'm going to lose money on this, because when I first went to look at the job, I thought that I could probably pull that end together, put let's say a dovetail piece on the back of the board to stop it from going any further. But it wasn't until I got it in here that I realised, do you know what, Al, you've made a balls up here on your price. But stick to my word, I've done a proper job on it. I've justified it for the table and the customer, and so I'm going to not send it out the door feeling half happy with it. So that's it all done long grain. Now all you need to do is this, and what you're doing with that is you are filling the open pores of the oak that's still not fully filled up with French polish, the grain as you might say, so that you can see where the wax is going to go. That's as far as I go with it. Just a quick wipe on the end, because in a few months' time, with people rubbing past that, having their hands on it and all the rest of it, it's what the trade and a lot of people tend to like to call filled up with patina. Patina? Yeah, righto, it's muck. Patina is muck, and apparently you can buy patina muck in a jar now to put on your antique furniture. Nah, don't get it somehow. Anyway, this must seem like I'm wiping it out now, but all I'm doing is getting off the excess. So that's that. As you can see, it's gone like a beigey colour. So the next stage is, we've got a little divot just here, and we've got a little bit of oak that came out of this edge knot on the join. Well, that's just going to get full of dust, patina, muck. So what I'm going to do is soft wax fill it. I was going to hot wax it, but it doesn't really need it on a table like this. So all of these different coloured waxes are for you to put in spots like this, or splits in the top or whatever, so that you can overcome those kind of cracks. Well, I reckon that it's either that one, nope, or that one. It's too green. Here we go, that's the one. As you can see, we do quite a lot of oak furniture. So, can you see this little pocket in here? Well, that is where I've been using this bit of dowel to scoop out the wax. It is quite soft. I'll bring it over to you. This is made by Liberon, and all it is just soft wax, and then you can get the dowel, just cut a piece of dowel off so that you can scrape it out. You can warm it in your hands or against a heater to soften it up a little bit, but I find it's better if you use it so that it's all as hard as it should be. We're working in something like 15-18 degree temperature in here, and that's how I like to try and keep it for French polishing. So all you do is you just force it in like that. Don't try and put in too much at a time, because you'll get air pockets at the back and it ends up lifting off. And what you're trying to do here is you're trying to force it in, a little bit like a dentist does with a filling. You're forcing it around any little hooks and back alleys that he can, so that it grips and stays in. And the beauty of this is, if it does start to drop, you can, even after you've put the coat of wax on, which is next, you can put some more of this on. So what you do then is you just rub the top, get a bit of friction into it. Can you see that? It's quite a dull looking top to it, but when you polish it, it will come up nice and bright. So what I do next, goes back in there, get the wire wool again, just go over the top of it like that, take the excess off. Again, it's cutting it rather than scratching it, and that now is ready for a wax. The wax I use on this one, and there are plenty of different waxes I use, but this particular one's a Liberon and it's medium oak, and the reason I'm using this is because for me to show you, it's really easy. You can get onto some of these carnauba waxes and they can be so difficult to use, but this does the job just as well. Now here's a tip for you as well. A lot of antique restorers will use wire wool to apply it. There's nothing wrong with doing that, and you can do it, and I'm telling you because you might find it easier for you to do it yourself in that way. And all you do is you use the same wire wool as you've been using on here, you put it into your wax and then you put it onto the top. But I don't. It's just the way I've been taught and the way that I prefer to do it. I use two brushes, which you'll see why in a minute. I use one for applying, and it's only ever for dark wax. Then I use this for dressing, and then I use something else for polishing. So first off, you apply the wax on oak anyway, across the grain. Get that out of the way a minute. So you don't put too much on, but then you start applying it like this. You're going across the grain, because you remember me telling you about those open pores and where I got the French polish dust to fill the open pores. Well, when you go over it with the wax like this, those open pores that had got the light coloured, beigey coloured French polish residue, when you go over it with the wax, you can see those holes disappear. So they're acting as a register for you to tell you, yeah, actually you've got your wax down into that wood pore of the oak. So you just put it on like that. It doesn't start pulling. It doesn't do anything that it shouldn't do. It just makes it look cloudy, makes the surface look cloudy as a good example. I don't know whether you can see that, but glossy against, or semi-glossy against the wax. You can over apply the wax so that you've got far too much on the surface, but this is the kind of amount that you're putting on. You spread it across, a bit like applying shoe polish, And in doing it this way, because I've already gone over the surface with wire wool, I'm not getting the polish or the wax skid off, because it will do if you don't. You apply a different kind of polish onto a highly polished French polished surface, I should say. So if it's like glass, then you're going to apply a different wax, which I'm not going to bore you with over this project, but there's different waxes for different surfaces, but all you're trying to do here is grain fill. I'll catch up with you in a minute when I've got all the way down to the end. It's a bit like watching polish dry, this is. We're almost there, down at the end of the table. Just keep casting your eye across to one of the lights to make sure that you've not got any shiny spots. Every now and again, especially on an edge, you might have to do that, but always end up again going across it, across the grain, just in case the bristles pull any of the wax out of the grain by going down it. Now I can feel just by going back up it like this that it's going to try and pull that off. So I'm just going to do this end and then leave it for about 5 minutes. You know, I was talking about this brush. Well, what I do then is I just go up after about 5 minutes, 10 minutes maybe. I go up and down the grain, and then all of these cross scores from doing this across the grain, I can see them as like lines across the grain. So what I do is just go up this and down it till the whole thing's done, then I leave it for 20 minutes. So we'll catch up again in a few minutes, and I'll just be finishing off this brushing, then we'll go into polishing it after another 10 minutes. I'll see you in a bit. Well, we've had a few minutes now, so I'm going to give it a light brushing over the dust off that. So all I'm doing is I'm just taking out the marks that are going across the grain. That's all I'm doing. I'm not trying to polish this up, because when you do polish it with a cloth, it's easier to have these marks removed. And I'm tripping over my mic wire here. This is going off quite nicely. I can feel it pulling on the brush. This is also taking off the excess, or pushing the excess into the pore of the wood rather. But what you'll be left with is a tabletop that is still open grained but well polished and ready to withstand the rigours of wining and dining. Just remember, if you spill red wine on it or white wine, get it off quick. Right, catch up with you another 15 minutes and we'll polish it. The last job. The wax has gone off, enough to polish anyway. Hopefully we'll be able to polish this just the once. And what you do is, nice old sweatshirt, you can see the excess coming up on it there. And just keep rubbing, not really hard. You're not trying to go through to the other side of the wood. All you're doing is just trying to create a buffed up surface. I already know this is going to want a second coat. I can tell. It's not giving the finish that I want on this first coat, so I'll have to leave it probably about 2 or 3 hours for it to fully harden, and then I'll go over it again with the cloth. But sorry, not the cloth, I'll go over it again with another coat of wax. It's coming, but it's not quite got enough build on the surface. You can, if you want to, use rotary heads on a drill to do this. Word of caution, don't hold it in one spot for too long, because you'll heat up the wax and possibly the polish underneath, and then you've got a repair job to both the French polish and the wax, but as a quick buzz over, it will take a lot of this graft out of it. And it's coming. The guy that taught me antique restoration, I served my time as a joiner at Hallam's in Melton. I was mainly doing bench joinery to start with, but when I left there I went to work for an antique restorer and met the guy that taught me. Well, the antique restorers went bust, which isn't difficult in the construction industry and all these allied trades. So that's not a criticism of the restorers, but they went bust, and I set up on my own. This was in 1981, and then the guy that taught me came to work for me for about 9 years. Sadly, he went a few years ago and decided to pop his clogs, bless him. But what he taught me, I've had so much enjoyment from, and you could as well. But what I would tell you how to start would be to go to an auction, buy something cheap so that you can afford to make a mess on it. But if it's a piece of painted furniture and you're doing shabby chic, or whether you're doing this kind of work on brown furniture, it's entirely up to you, but you'll get so much enjoyment from it. I still do. It's just a shame I've got to try and make it pay and make a living out of it. But if you're doing it as a hobby, it is great fun. Right, I'm going to leave that, and then I'm going to come back to it in about an hour. So hopefully when you see it next time, it'll have had its second coat on and it'll be all nicely buffed up. So last picture of this will be waxed on here, and I'll do a quick explanation of it, and then it's going to the customers. I won't film it at the customers, but you will see the table with the leaves on in its backdrop, all finished, job done. I hope you've enjoyed this. I've enjoyed doing it, and I hope that it's given you a bit of encouragement to have a go yourself. So ta-ta for now, and I'll catch you on another one. Bye. As you can see from the tabletop, now that the leaves are attached, the centre that I've restored is ever so slightly darker. Remember me saying about that big blob in the sky, the sun? Well, the sun will darken down that central leaf quicker so that it matches up with the leaves that are attached to it. Does look slightly darker now, but it won't be in a few months' time. Right, the tabletop has got a split in it. I've cut the split out, I've pushed the two pieces of wood back together. Now I'm going to biscuit joint it, glue it, put the two pieces of wood back together, strip the top, stain it, French polish it, and clear it off back to the owner. Thank you, bye.